Welcome to China Daily Big Talk. This is a special interview for the 19th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of China. I'm Christie Lee, and joining me in the studio today is Professor Yang Heping from the University of International Business and Economics. Welcome to China Daily, Mr. Yang. I think some members of our audience might be a bit confused why I would introduce an expat by his Chinese name, but I just feel it's a bit difficult to define whether you are an American or Chinese in spite of your look. What do you think?
I'm neither, or both.
Yeah, Chinese because you were born in Beijing, but American because that's your nationality. So I think in order to tell your story, we'd better date back to the 1940s when Yang's mother first came to China. Back in the US, she used to be a nuclear physicist who participated in developing the first atomic bomb in the US. That could have led her to a very successful and very prosperous life, but why did she choose to come to China instead?
During the wartime, she was invited to be part of the Manhattan Project. And then when the war almost over, they detonated the bomb at a test in the Los Alamos, near Los Alamos in the desert, and it was successful. And about 2 weeks later, very soon, they dropped 2 bombs in Japan.
Yeah.
And that was a devastating experience for my mom. She didn't expect they would use that bomb on human. So my mom was very angry, and they organized a lot of nuclear physicists for a campaign to make sure the nuclear bombs are in the hands of civilian control
Instead of military control.
Yeah. And so after they lobbied and the law was passed, she thought everything is fine, so she went back to her study. By chance, she found out her scholarship came from the Navy, U.S. Navy.
Wow.
And that would just totally distraught her. She didn't. I think there's a phrase maybe in Chinese. It's like the Sun Wukong cannot jump out of the Wu Lai Fu's hand.
Yeah, you can never escape from
Yeah, you
that
cannot
thing.
escape. So she really was in a quandary. She said, well, she can either pretend to be a person that thoroughly in pure science, what this science is going to be used for is not her business. Or she have to leave the nuclear physics field altogether, because she realized any discoveries, any advancements, any new knowledge that she will help to learn about nuclear physics will be will be used by U.S. to build better bomb.
And then she chose the latter.
Her conscience says she cannot have no choice. Now that was 1948. By then, my father has already went to China. He went to China in 1946. And they know each other because my father and my uncle, my mother's older brother, were roommates in Cornell University for 1 year. So through that, my father know my mother. I think they know each other since 44, 45.
So did your father have a crush on her then?
Yeah, yeah. And in fact, before my father came to China, 1946, he purposely went to Los Alamos to meet my mom. They went camping. They talked about it, and they says, well, my mom was working in the nuclear field, was all man. I mean, there's no lack of candidates, but she was not interested in romance. Her heart's all into nuclear physics. And so she liked my father, but just as a friend. And my father has a crush on her, but she was not ready. And my father was a dairy farmer. My mother was nuclear physics. In the U.S., what would they do? There's not much.
I think they were really far away from each other.
Yeah,
actually.
Well, in a nuclear lab, there's a farm outside, and so they can be together physically. What they talk about afterwards would be hard. And so my father went to China wishing she would go, and she was just all into her nuclear physics. So they had a correspondence for 2 years, and my father would be writing about his exciting stories in China, in Yan'an, escaping from KMT's encirclement in Yan'an, Hu Zhongnan's army, was the most amazing story. And my mother will write exciting stories about black hole. So my father just used those letters to wipe himself because no other papers available. And my mother will never forget him for that. But my father kept on writing, says, you know, you can always go back to nuclear physics a later time in life. Right now it's so exciting in China. You should come. You're going to miss this if you don't. Of course, I also want you to be here. That's a selfish interest. So with this is the background. So when my mother found out that her scholarship come from Navy, she was so distraught. And so she has to find a way out, where to go. She knows what she doesn't want. She doesn't know what she wants. So coming to China is a way to find a way out for her.
In China, they got married.
Well, yeah. She wasn't expecting to get married, but well, it took her a year to get to Yan'an. I mean, she came to spring of 48, and by the time she get to Yan'an, it's spring 49. Because it's really hard to get in because there was a war, civil war going on. She wasn't expected to get married, but the custom, everybody says, telling my father, oh, you, poi, your, what's that in English? Your wife or your fiancé is here. And the pressure is pretty great. And so, well, might as well get married. So that's how they get married in the spring of 49. In fact, February, no. Yeah, it's April 2nd. Now I dig up their old marriage certificate.
I think actually when they were in the U.S., they had nothing in common, but it was China that drew them together.
Well, they have a lot in common to turn out. That love for life, love for being very close to ordinary people. And in China, they have something in common because they both throw themselves into the biggest project is building a new China, and so they just throw themselves into this big project, and so they're doing things together, doing dairy mechanization. My father is into animal husbandry, how to raise cows and other animals, and my mother's always into machine designs, farm equipment implementation. And so all these things draw them together. So they work very closely together. And as I growing up, I just remember they talk to each other all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
So even after all those years, they got married?
Yeah. Just they're the best friend. They're the best friend.
We know that actually both of your parents worked in Yan'an, but your mother went to Beijing to give birth to you.
Because my mom witnessed many difficult childbirth. And so she thought it'd be safer to go to a large city. And my uncle, Bill Hinton, was in Beijing that time. So she came to Beijing to visit my uncle and also trying to give birth to me.
But when she was in Beijing, she attended a peace conference which exposed her to the rest of the world. The former U.S. nuclear physicist was now in China.
Yeah, because in that conference that she was invited to participate, and at one lunchtime she was having lunch with the Japanese delegate. And so she talked to the Japanese delegate about how she being pure scientist, never cared about politics. And she found out that is not true. You cannot be a pure scientist in the imperialist world. So those delegates, she had a great speech, so they asked her to make that same speech to the whole conference. And it was that speech exposed her to the world. All kinds of rumors shows up.
I bet.
Yeah. So,
but she never really participated in China's nuclear development.
No, not even. I think I'm not sure when, 60s or sometimes, people ask her whether she wanted to be a teacher in the university in Xi'an, teach anything she wants. She refused.
Why?
She does not want to leave the farm. She loves what she's doing. She does not want to go to academics at all.
What kind of happiness do you think she found on the farm in Yan?
Well, it's not the specifics. It's the environment. In Mao's China, there is this sense of equality between the leaders and the workers, between party and the masses. It's this thing, everybody working together to build a new world, and you're not working for your own self-interest. You're not working against each other, and you are doing for a common good, a common project. And as a result, that you can be totally engaged in what you're doing there. My mother loves to designing machinery, and you see, when she was in Los Alamos, part of the Manhattan Project, there were thousands of scientists. She couldn't remember much what she did, and what she did is so insignificant. And so this Chinese phrase called 滥竽充数, you can just get by with, you can just pretend you're doing something.
Yeah, you can just get by doing nothing.
Yeah, yeah. So there's nothing really challenging. But when coming to China, there's nothing practically, and there's your real talent, your real ability shows off. So she found it really exciting doing the work she did. She's the kind of person that can't sit still, cannot be silent, be quiet. She's just very active. She's looking for challenging projects and overcome difficulties. And she's an exciting person. She is an energetic person. She's very persevering to the extreme. My father called she as a tank. Yeah, nothing can stop her. If she need to do this, she will just do it. And she need parts, doing the cooling machine for the milk. She go to the factory in the city and find who has it. And if you don't have it, you got to make for it. And then if they're not doing the right way, she sit in the office. I wait until you get done.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's
but
really amazing.
The thing is that she's not doing that for herself. So she can be bullying in that sense with no regret, with no... and people understand. People don't get upset. I never heard anybody complain. See, what happened? Why they're so happy and so engaged and so full of energy and so full of love and challenge in their life is because they actually merge their own the things they're interested in and what people need. Yeah. If you're doing something you love to do and something that people needed you to do, that's no regret. That's just so much fun.
So what kind of education did you receive at home when you were little? Was it American style or Chinese style?
It's a mixture of two. My father is very humorous, and I didn't know that until much later, but their family is always cracking jokes and fooling around, and there's no sense of status like Chinese, that rigid hierarchy.
Like you are my father, I have to listen to you.
Yeah, and in our family it doesn't have. We have criticism, self-criticism sessions, and so my father has a bad temper and quite often gets spanked, and so in those meetings I will complain, and then my father will make a very sincere self-criticism, and then a few days later he get angry, he spank me again. So we will say, Chinese saying that 虚心接受坚决不改. So it's like you really admit your mistakes where you resolutely refuse to change.
Yeah.
We'll change that, the Chinese phrase.
So did you speak English with your parents?
Well, when I was very young, I learned a few phrases, but
like what?
Well, nose, ears, mouth, and things like that. See, my mother and father both work, so we have a maid at home to help do the cooking, raising the children, and so I don't get a lot of environment speaking English. But I also, when I was young, I eat very fast. And then I get a big stomach, and I start crying, and my folks point at my stomach and say, "Oh my God, look at that stomach." So one day my folks trying to test my English, and they said, "Well, what is this nose? What is this mouth? What is this ears? What is this? My God." And they said that was not my God. I was devastated. That's the only word I learned by myself. I got it wrong. From then on, I hated English. I do not want to learn English.
So what changed your mind?
I didn't really think about learning English until very late. Like, I think the first time I got really interested in learning English, it was 1967. The reason was that there was a Black Panther movement, that people in the U.S. uprising against the black people uprising against the white supremacy, against racism. And so there was a lot of articles written by these leaders of black movement. And I got so interested, I want to read them. And my father and mother said, "Well, this time for you to learn English."
So did you have a teacher, or did you learn by yourself?
I didn't devote full time to it. I just read a little bit. And then when I went to work in the factory after we graduated from our middle school, I worked in the factory in Beijing for 5 years, from 1969 to 1974. That time I remember listening to Voice of America and reading simple stories in English. Voice America has a slow English.
Yeah.
So I learned quite a bit. I thought I learned quite a bit. Then I went to U.S. in 1974 for the first time, and I got lost because I mixed up Los Angeles and San Francisco. In Chinese, their names are
very different. Yeah.
But in English, there's 3 letters in front and a whole bunch of letters in the back. So to me, they're just, I was saying, what is the chance large city in the U.S. and West Coast have the same pattern? It must be the same one. So I got off plane and waited for my plane to leave from Los Angeles in San Francisco 4 hours later, and find out I missed the plane.
Your experience kind of reminds me of Pearl S. Buck. She had actually expressed many times in her books the confusion she felt about her identity. Sometimes she says she feels Chinese, while sometimes she says she feels American. Do you have that kind of confusion of a split identity, like you don't know where you belong?
Those who have mixed parentage are stronger that way. For me, there was no ambiguity from the look. People always say I'm American, and go to the U.S. If I don't open my mouth, people think I'm American because I have a name. My parents are there. I have relatives, everything. But as soon as I open my mouth, start talk, people find out I'm different. In fact, when I went to the U.S. in 70, I think what year was that? Can't remember. My brother and I went to a friend's house on the way back to home. Went to New York City, and we stopped by a friend's house, and they said, "Have you eaten?" And of course we are starving, but we don't embarrassed to say we are hungry. We said, "Yeah, we had already," and so they give us two little bowls, and we vanished, just gobble it right down, and said, "How about another one?" Okay, we had 7 of the bowls.
Oh my God!
So afterwards, a year later, they came to Beijing and told my mom, you know, your 2 sons finished off what we planned for a whole week. They were hoping to save enough food so they don't have to cook every night.
You ate them all.
Yeah, so these are all embarrassments and customs, and it's deeply ingrained in your childhood. It's really hard to change.
So why did you go back to the U.S.?
Well, I didn't go back to the U.S. I went to the U.S. You have to coming from there then go back. I wasn't.
Okay.
I was born and raised in China, so no sense of going back to the U.S. I went to the U.S. first time in '74. mainly because curiosity. I was just fascinated because everybody say I'm American,
Yeah,
US.
and you don't know where it is.
I know nothing about it. I was just curious. All my relatives there, and were just dying of curiosity. I thought I'd go there a few years. If I can stay, stay. If not, go back, come back. Yeah. So I still treat China as my home, as my secure place, and when I was young, and so that's primary. There's a sense of that in China. I'm always being treated as an outsider.
You feel that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's ever since I left the farm. I mean, growing up on the farm, I don't feel the outsider. But if I leave the farm, go to city, like I went to Xi'an Zhongxue for Xi'an Middle School for my first year of middle school, and I was total outsider. So it was tough for a young kid to know what that means, how to make sense of it. So going to U.S., I'm not outsider until I open my mouth.
Right, and you don't have anything in common with your peers, like the TV plays they watch, the music they listen to?
Yeah, it's very, that's the thing. On the surface, there's a lot of cultural gap and a cultural shock. And like the people in the U.S., they watch Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, and I have no feeling for it.
You watch Monkey King?
Well, so I talk about Monkey King, they say, what is that? So we don't have a there's no not on the same wavelength. So that's a surface type of thing. But I found out. I mean, I went to U.S. and soon like in 79, I got in love and married to an American woman. So I was always in the American culture. I tried to assimilate for 30-some years. I find I could not assimilate. The things that you're excited, that you feel you pay a lot of attention to, people there don't care. Very different. And the most telling example was 1990 when U.S. invaded Iraq. I was just furious. This is blatant imperialism. And the people in the U.S. feel, wow, we got to help Kuwait. And Kuwait was being invaded by Iraq. And so I put up a poster, no blood for oil, in my office. And a lot of my colleagues don't understand. Being a citizen of an imperialist country, people don't see U.S. as imperialist country. Whereas to me it's so blatant, so obvious.
I heard that you actually bought a radio back in the U.S. to keep updated with things happening in China.
Oh yeah, I was so homesick. God, I tried so hard. I mean, the very first Chinese language newspaper arrived in the U.S. to my house 3 months after I arrived. So first 3 months is like house arrest.
How did you cope?
Was tough. Was really hard. Miserable. Was miserable.
Really?
I just have nobody to speak and nobody to talk to. But I forced myself to learn. I have a radio. While I was working at my uncle's farm, I listened to radio. I don't know a thing they're talking about, but I just keep on listening. After a few months, they start talking slower and slower, and I start capturing a few phrases here and there. But I don't know the key things. For example, I hear Congress having hearings, something about Nixon. But I didn't understand the word impeachment. Even I understand 99%, but that key word I don't understand. I don't know what they're talking about. So there's things like that. So I bought a radio. I want to hear 中央人民广播电台.
And also during your stay in the U.S., that's when Chairman Mao passed away. I bet you got the news. How did you feel when you got the news in the U.S.?
Very sad. Very sad.
You heard it from the radio?
No, I was on a camping trip, and I heard from the radio in the U.S. And then we rushed back, and we had the ceremony.
You rushed back to China?
No, to the city.
To the city?
Yeah, after camping. Because I was still working at the U.S.-China People's Friendship Association. And So we had a big memorial service, and it was really sad.
And in the 1980s, you kept coming back to China a few times, and that's when China was undergoing dramatic changes, both economically and socially.
Well, China actually was changing a lot. And see, I left 74, I came back 77. There's so much change already happened in those 3 years. You know, it's just like China is rapidly developing, and people always trying to compare the post-79 to pre-79 as big. I mean, in terms of growth in China, China is happening all along, not just happened last 30 years. The 79 China compared to 49 China is night and day, because what China had in the 49 was just totally practically nothing. And in the city we lived in Xi'an, there was hardly any industry. The joke is that the only industry there is the match factory. There was one or two textile mill. But by 79, Xi'an is an industrial city, a big, heavy industrial city. And around country, the same thing. But the difference is that after 49, China developed capitalism, the rapid developing capitalism. I mean, you see, Marxism never denied the ability of capitalism to develop the force of production. And in fact, you read the Communist Manifesto, in the way Marx praised about capitalism in one century produced more wealth than all the centuries combined. And it's very powerful. So so when I came back in 77, I saw so many new buildings in Beijing, so many new changes. And I came back 79, more changes. And then I come back 80. I went to 82 or something. I went to Fujian. I saw all these sweatshops, the child labor in these small enterprises along coastline. Capitalism is booming, blossoming, and just really rapid. So it's very confusing. At that time, the newspaper have a lot of talks about reform and critique of the planned economy and Mao's period, Cultural Revolution, and so on and so forth. I feel very inadequate. I feel very confused. I feel I don't know, understand. Some things I don't agree, but I don't know why. I cannot make sense of it. And things I agree, I don't know how to articulate it. And so that's when I decided to go to college. I wasn't interested in college before 80. I was in the U.S. 6 years before I decided to go to college.
So did college help you to sort things out that you didn't understand?
Yeah, after 15, 20 years. See, 80, I started in early 80, 81 probably I started night school. And then when I finished my PhD, it was 97. It took me 17 years. Yeah, finally, I mean, a lot of changes happened in China, and the things I learned in the U.S., and things, finally you sort through things. And so, yeah, I feel a lot more, I understand a lot more what's happening, and the people have to compare, contrast to make sense.
You spent some other years after graduation in America, but eventually in 2007 you decided to come back to China. What made you make that decision?
I really always had the thought I want to come back to China, but it was not possible, not feasible.
Was it because of your wife?
Yeah, wife, children. I bring them come to China for visits, one thing, but to make them to come to live in China, it's not an option, really. So finally, when the kids are grown, start working, they're out of house, divorced, I'm divorced, and I finished everything. So I said, wow, now I can choose my life now. Where do I want to go? China.
So 50-some years ago, your parents made a very extraordinary decision to come to China, and that changed their life and somehow helped shape yours. You know, you could have a richer or better life if you were born in America. Have they or have you ever regretted this?
No, I have the most interesting life, and I have the chance to be in both society, contrast both, and I will not change for anything else, really. And just like my folks have no regret, both of them had the most exciting, interesting, challenging, sometimes heartbreaking, and just there's not a dull moment. There's not a dull moment. They're not bored ever.
Really?
Never, never. There's no. That's one thing. There's not a. In China, you can be sad, you be angry, you be happy, but you're never bored.
Thank you, Mr. Yang, for sharing your story with us. And thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.